I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. Bernie knows me and has known me for a long time. He knows who I am, where I come from, what I have worked on and fought for, and the coalition and grassroots movement we're trying to build. Democrats want to win in 2020. We all saw the impact of the factionalism in 2016, and we can't have a repeat of that.
This is just one of the attacks that Elizabeth Warren leveled at Sanders. At one point, she was hitting him pretty much every week, every time a camera was on. She took on the same line that the Democratic Party had taken on, that his supporters were fundamentally somehow different than the other supporters. Now, keep in mind, the reason that this was being done wasn't because there was anything different about Sanders supporters. Yeah, there were probably more of them because of the age range stuff. But ultimately, they did this because that's a weapon of Sanders. That's something that's a strength of his. That's almost like trying to swift boat. When John Kerry had his military record, they attacked John Kerry's military record to undermine it because that was going to be a strength of John Kerry. Same thing with Sanders. The same thing applies. The catch here is this is somewhat of a stupid attack, because if you care at all about getting elected, you're going to need those people. And the fact that you decided that you couldn't hit the candidate because nothing that you were throwing at the candidate was sticking, and so you go after supporters, that may get you some short-term gain, but from the standpoint of a long-term win in the general, that is probably not the best strategy to do so. And this is already with an element of the political spectrum that hates the party, So it's like you've doubly injured yourself on this. Now, from the beginning, I was never under any delusion that Elizabeth Warren was not, NOT, working on behalf of the left. I assumed, based on the way she was running her campaign, that she was there to some degree to split the vote. Once it got to the point where Elizabeth Warren had collapsed, she started to outright attack Sanders. Even when it became clear that Warren had no chance, she stayed in that race with the point using money from plutocrats to keep her in that race just enough time to split the vote. And then when she gets out the race, she continues to attack Sanders and his supporters. The reason I'm bringing this up, because otherwise I wouldn't have said pretty much anything else about Warren. I don't have good thoughts about Warren. I greatly dislike her now, probably more than any time I think in the previous history. And in real terms, I think she's betrayed the left. Now, again, some of us like me have been saying Warren is screwing you over. You shouldn't be supporting her if you know the person is Sanders. If you know the authentic person in this process is Sanders, then support Sanders, support the guy, as opposed to supporting the person who's the echo who didn't support you in 2016. The fact that she behaved that way in 2016, she showed me she was a political actor, not an ideological actor, in which case, if she got the opportunity to get political concessions from the Democratic Party, the establishment Democrats, and she thought that that was the fastest train moving, she would probably take that opportunity. That's the only way I saw this race. Everybody who wasn't Sanders was against Sanders. Right now, Warren got out the race, didn't back Sanders. Again, this wasn't ideological, this was political. She can get political concessions for effectively not throwing her weight behind Sanders. Just like she was going to get political concessions in 2016. It's just a repeat. She did what she did again. They're asking the question, and Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian are arguing about this, on whether or not Joe Biden picking Elizabeth Warren for vice president will somehow unify the Democratic Party. I find this to be somewhat ludicrous. And I think I tweeted back, like, get off your knees, dude. Not only would that not work, meaning not only would that not unify the party, it shouldn't unify the party. Meaning, and we could talk about it after, and I'll let you hear Anna, because, and I don't say this much, but Anna in this case is absolutely 1000% indubitably right. She's absolutely right. Uygur has no idea what he's talking about. But I'll let them make their argument so you can hear for yourself. And I'll explain why I make the point, not only don't I think this will work, it should not work. Welcome to Late Night Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. I'm not going to keep this video long, but I wanted to finish this one up before tomorrow, before turning in. They're making the argument, apparently Biden is getting some level of pressure to choose this person as his VP with the hopes, the idea that it will somehow bring over lefties to the Democratic Party.
Really attacked them. Do you feel, and you're someone who's actually come under that attack before, back in Iowa, back in January, do you feel like he's done enough to condemn the culture online that stems from his movement?
I've said before that we are all responsible for what our supporters do. And I think Bernie has a lot of questions to answer here. And I am particularly worried about what happened in the attacks on members of the Culinary Union, particularly on the women in leadership.
Yeah, because Bernie and his supporters are just out there attacking women. That's why. Cenk Uygur thinks that this person, who's been absolutely grifting on the left and didn't support the left after they got out the race, that person's going to unify the party. Let's hear Uygur, or a piece of Uygur's argument, and let's hear Anna, because Anna's indignation on this is the appropriate response.
A classic establishment thing to do. Oh, no, it's okay.
Also, you know, what's funny about this video, Cenk Uygur talks a big game, but at the end of the day, it's always bend the knee.
Hey, we found an establishment woman, so it's okay. No, it's not at all okay. It has to be a progressive. And so, you know, I'm sure some of you will find this controversial. I don't find it at all controversial. I think it has to be Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, come on, Cenk. Cenk, if you think that Elizabeth Warren is going to unite the party, she hasn't endorsed Bernie Sanders. Like, this narcissistic ego trip that she's on right now is unacceptable, Cenk. It's unacceptable. And people are understandably and justifiably angry at her for this.
Now, that argument is on point. And whether Cenk realizes it or not, he's not really going to answer the main point that Anna is making. She didn't endorse Sanders, meaning you're arguing that Warren is a progressive. All right? Is it a progressive a thing, or is it a verb? Meaning, do you have to do something to be progressive, or can you just be there kind of like a rose in a vase and just be progressive? No, I think it's an action. I think it's something that you do, a behavior that you take on, not just a passive ideology of sorts. Warren was in this race with the idea that she was putting through big structural change. She was just the capitalist, unlike Sanders, and she believed she could float between the raindrops. I can be the in-between Sanders and Joe Biden. Basically, I'm not as far to the left as Sanders, but I can talk a big game, and I can pretend as if I'm that direction, and enough so I can get those votes. Meaning she took a specific political disposition in order to run to the left, to pull votes from Sanders, to pull votes from the left. And fair enough. You can run how you want to run. My issue has more to do with the dishonesty of the positions more than anything else. But still, that's how she ran the race. She ran the race grifting money and support from the left. So if you get out the race and it becomes clear that the left has roundly chosen Sanders, whether Sanders has enough to win or not, it's secondary to the fact that the left, the people she was getting votes from, clearly chose Sanders. And then for her to turn around and say, I'm not endorsing him. That's mind-blowing. For the people who make this argument that Elizabeth Warren doesn't owe anything to anybody, okay, fair enough, maybe. But I would say if you run a race where you're acting as if you care about big structural change, that you're an ideological actor, then you should back the guy who all of those people who are backing you, many of which want you to support. Whether that's 5%, whether that's 10%, looks like, even just for your own political career, looks like you'd have did it. Which gets to my second point. The left shouldn't back her on this. Meaning, what Anna is feeling is the prevalent opinion. That's the basic opinion. Basically, why on earth would lefties back Warren when they are clearly pissed off at her not backing their guy? Again. Her not backing their guy again. Meaning, if you're going to grift on the left to get campaign donations from this particular side of the political spectrum, and on top of that, you're going to talk a game as if you are Bernie light, and then you don't endorse Sanders, and then you're going to make the argument that people should back her after betraying them, that's ludicrous. I mean, that's utterly insane. Like, why would anybody turn around and support Warren after Warren didn't back their interests in 2016, nor back their interests in 2020? And not even that back their interests, didn't even endorse the guy after the guy never said a bad word about her. And you believe lefties, after fully internalizing that, are going to turn around and back Joe Biden because Elizabeth Warren is made VP. Look, the people who Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden needs to pull are effectively Sanders supporters. Sanders supporters, on the whole, tend to be less likely to support the Democratic Party, meaning they tend to be more ideological, not necessarily just overtly political in the way that they act. Meaning that that's the core part of the political spectrum that will be less likely to support Joe Biden, and I am strongly betting that that's going to be more than what it was in 2020. Just seeing by the people now who are saying, yeah, I'm not voting for Joe Biden. You shouldn't support her in a situation where she betrayed you twice. I'm just saying, what on earth does accountability look like? And does accountability mean anything at all if a person betrays you and then you turn around and back the person after the person screws you over twice? And yeah, I said twice because, again, in 2016, if she is supposed to be an ideological actor, which is the way she presents herself, and then you act overtly political, then yeah, I'm going to take qualms with that. I don't give her a pass in 2016, just like I don't give her a pass in 2020. The only catch in 2020, I had no illusions about who Elizabeth Warren was in this race. Let's hear Cenk make his argument. But before I let Cenk make his argument, one more. When Warren got out the race, and keep in mind, roles reverse, Sanders would have immediately turned around and endorsed Warren. Because again, for him, he is functioning from an ideological disposition of trying to affect the interests of the left. For Warren to run this race, call it a big structural change, she gets us out the race, and then when she gets out the race, she goes on Rachel Maddow and says this.
Problem with Sanders' supporters.
It is. I mean, and it just is. It's just a factual question. And it is. And that's something I think that
Have you ever talked with Senator Sanders about that?
I have.
What was that conversation like?
It was short. But yeah, we've talked about it. But I think it's a real problem.
Does he not share your view that he's responsible for the behavior of supporters?
You know, I shouldn't speak for him. It's something he should speak for himself on. But I do think it's something that we need to reckon with in our political discourse in particular, because this is what politics is about, is to get out and put your ideas out there, and people choose sides, people vote, people say, I'm holding a sign for her, I'm holding a sign for him. That is part of what we do. But what underlies that is a fundamental human decency and respect for each other.
Yeah. Not endorse, goes out and continues attacking. And Cenk Uygur believes lefties are going to flock to Joe Biden because of Warren. Let's hear Cenk make his argument. I think this argument is utterly ludicrous to me. Get off your knees, dude. I mean, how are you going to, I'm a tough guy, but in every situation, I knuckle under and capitulate. He believes that he is going to get some kind of leverage with Elizabeth Warren being in the race. Why do you believe you're going to get leverage for anything? At which point did you get leverage? Hillary Clinton won. You backed Clinton. Clinton wasn't going to give you squat. She didn't have to give you squat because you were putting her in that office because you were terrified of the other guy. And once again, like a broken clock, Cenk Uygur back again to endorse Joe Biden. And this time, following up that endorsement with Joe Biden with backing a person that effectively screwed over lefties. I need you guys to support the person who screwed you over. And yeah, I know I tried to get you to support the party that cheated your guy. It's like, God, man, home of the progressives, my ass. Let's hear these two go at it.
And
she hasn't endorsed Bernie Sanders. Like, this narcissistic ego trip that she's on right now is unacceptable, Cenk. It's unacceptable. And
Anna is right. Anna is right. Again, I didn't have any illusions about Warren, but Anna at one point did, which is why
people are understand.
I have a bit of fascination and awe with watching her come to her senses on this issue of Warren. I'm just fascinated by this. That's all. Let's let her finish.
Understandably and justifiably angry at her for this.
Anna, it doesn't matter. We got to get past.
No, I get it, but what you're not understanding is Bernie supporters are not happy with what she's doing right now. So what makes you think that Biden choosing her as the running mate is going to somehow miraculously unite the party? I don't think that's going to happen at all.
No, it's not about miraculously uniting the party. It partly is, but it's certainly not miraculously. But Anna, look at this. Okay, so a couple of things. So I said Elizabeth Warren should have endorsed Bernie this time around as soon as she dropped out. I said she should endorse Bernie last time around. Of course, I was right, not just ideologically, but politically. Because right now, if she had endorsed Bernie Sanders, progressives would be rooting for her more, right? And it would.
It's not more. They're not rooting for her at all. I hope you understand what I mean. I think this is the disconnect. They're not rooting for her at all. They feel fucked over. They supported that woman with this notion that she was Bernie Sanders light. And then at the end of the election, after grifting votes from the left and money from the left, she turns around and attacks Sanders supporters, the very people that many of her supporters are also part of. I mean, I guess I'm making the point that it's not this issue of support her more. They don't support her at all. And you are also making another assumption. You weren't right. You've been wrong this entire time. You're making the assumption that her values are in line with Sanders. I don't know why you're making that assumption. I know you've talked to her, so fair enough. But at the end of the day, what you do is the thing that I measure you on, not necessarily what you tell me you think or believe. And ultimately, in real-term situations back in 2016 and in 2020, where she had an opportunity to have some level of influence, maybe not towards the end in 2020. I'm sorry. Actually, she would have had an influence in 2020. If Warren wasn't in that race in multiple states, Sanders would have taken multiple states and it would have looked completely different in regards to Super Tuesday. So I guess my point is she had a deleterious effect on Sanders' campaign while running as if she was being some friend and ally to the left. No, she's not being supported. People don't support Warren right now. They're pretty pissed off at her. The idea that you're saying, I was right, she should have endorsed them. Yes, she should have endorsed them, but that's neither here nor there. I would imagine, since you did back Sanders in 2016 before backing Clinton, or for that matter, backed him in 2020, that yeah, you would have, all things been equal, would have preferred her to back him. Not to mention, you back her. Meaning in multiple situations, you've given her these past interviews or you've had these conversations about her where you don't ask her the questions that need to be asked. You're buddies with her to some degree. Even in this election, when your entire and only focus should have been on Sanders, you weren't. Your divided loyalties in regards to Sanders and Warren. And what did she end up doing? She fucked you over again. She fucked you over again. And what's your response? Well, clearly we have to support her.
Unite the party. So that was yet another mistake by the Warren team. I don't take any pride in saying I was right. It's unfortunate that I was right, but we're past that. You have to move on. You have to move on. So in terms of the picks that are realistic for Biden right now, Warren is as good as it's going to get for progressives. They're not going to pick Bernie Sanders. They're not going to pick Nina Turner. The only prayer we have is Elizabeth Warren. Otherwise, you're talking about Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, some other person that is going to be establishment 101, and we don't have any prayer at all of influencing this administration, the direction they're going, and bringing enough progressives over to actually win the election. That's such a...
Your influence in this race would not be had with Warren as a vice president. How sad is it that he says Warren, the person who screwed over lefties, is our only hope? You've lost it. You've absolutely lost it. If you're going to get anything out of this, which I don't think you are, look, I don't know if Biden is going to choose Warren. I don't think it would matter. The people who Biden need are effectively the people who they burned relentlessly throughout the course of this campaign. There's that. But the notion that your argument is that Warren is our only hope, that's mind-blowing to me. If you're trying to get anything done from a policy-oriented position, even if they choose Warren, it's not going to matter. I don't know what you think you're going to get from the standpoint of some level of influence with Warren being the vice president. I hate to tell you this. You're not going to get what you think you're going to get, just like the argument, basically, that you're submitting to is you have nowhere else to go. That's all this is. I mean, back in 2016, when you burned the reputation of the show to support Clinton, again, folding into this notion of you have nowhere else to go. The same thing with us. You got to back Warren. You got to back Warren. I understand she screwed us over, but you got to back Warren. That's nonsense. If you want to get any political concessions, and Sanders would never do this, so this is off the table, which is why I just look at this and say, this is a fail. But if you're going to get any political concessions, Sanders' support and his backing and boosting of people should have been tethered to policy concessions. That's the way the concessions should be had, meaning you have a huge number of people that back your particular candidate. They want your candidate to go out there and try to boost them in order to get votes and sheepdog. And that candidate makes the argument, I will only do that for this, this, and this. Those are your concessions. The notion that you're trying to back Warren for this particular position, I'm sorry, I find it to be remarkably just sad. I just do. Remarkably and entirely sad. I'll leave it here. I don't want this one to go too late. Rob R. Trump will have Pocahontas and Melting Brain Joe. Yes, he will be calling her Pocahontas relentlessly. That will be a slam dunk on a silver platter for Trump. I don't think Warren gets him the bang for the buck that I think they may think. Meaning, if Warren was going to do that, if Warren was going to be chosen as vice president, she had to endorse Sanders. Like, there's no way around that. I don't know how you make that work. Basically, you're trying to get her to bring over lefties. Okay. But she never supported lefties when she got out the race. And I would even argue, not even in the race, because she was splitting the vote at a time where he needed those votes. He needed those states, even if it's just going forward with the perspective, the narrative of things. Yeah, I just find that video remarkably sad. Like, Anna is dead on in this video. She's like, Jake, that's not going to happen. Like, lefties aren't going to back her like that in the way that you're thinking of. And again, like I asked before, how do you know that she is what you think she is? She screwed you over in 20. My point is, she's a political actor. She was a political actor in 2016. She's a political actor in 2020. I suspect she's going to get some level of political concessions, just like she was going to get political concessions out of Hillary Clinton for her tacit support. That's the beginning and the end of it. Wow. Home of the progressives. Home of the progressives. Like, share, subscribe. Night, everybody. Stay safe.